There's an old proverb that says that variety is the spice of life. However, when it comes to the media, oftentimes they'll try to chase trends, or fall back on what's already been proven in order to play it safe. And this seems to be true across the media in general: movies, TV shows, books, even anime and visual novels. Like for example, Hollywood's reliance on reboots, remakes, and sequels. Or if a story becomes a hit, there'll be a lot of copycats or people trying to chase that trend. Like when The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins came out, which saw a rise in YA dystopian novels, and also film adaptations. At the height of the MCU, other studios wanted to create their own cinematic universes, but most of them crashed and burned before they got a chance to get off the ground. Like Universal's Dark Universe, for example. Oftentimes companies will see something that's successful and try to replicate it without really understanding what made it successful in the first place, while also focusing too much on setting up future projects instead of actually fleshing out the movie that they made first. Basically, they weren't really interested in any setup, and just wanted to skip straight to the major moneymaker. DC made the same mistake. They made Justice League in an attempt to capture the same success the Avengers did, but without doing much setup like the MCU did with Phase 1, which ultimately didn't do them any favors. I think these cinematic universes did have potential, but they ended up focusing too much on following a trend, instead of being and doing their own thing. And unfortunately, the MCU has also been falling into these traps. Like how they faced criticisms for relying too heavily on skybeams. Basically, the MCU was known for a specific formula, which was kind of hard to not notice, and they weren't really willing to take risks or stray away from that formula, at least when it came to their movies. For example, Black Widow. The character probably should have gotten a solo movie during Phase 2 of the MCU. However, Marvel CEO at the time, Ike Perlmutter, refused to greenlight a female-led superhero movie. He had a background in the toy market and believed that a female superhero wouldn't make good merchandise for young boys, who wouldn't want to play with a female action figure, while also citing low-performing female-led superhero movies from the past, such as Catwoman or Elektra from the early 2000s. According to a statement by Kevin Feige, it wasn't until 2017's Wonder Woman that the MCU decided that they could make a female superhero-led action movie, proving the box office wasn't opposed to such a film being made. However, the MCU still wasn't willing to give Black Widow her own film, and instead went with Captain Marvel as their first female-led movie, again because of their formula. Natasha doesn't have flashy powers that they can show off in bombastic action scenes, but Carol does, so they thought she would be a better choice to rival Wonder Woman. Unfortunately, recent phases of the MCU have gone down in quality, with many people agreeing that it probably could have stopped at Endgame, and I also think they might have tried to overcorrect for Perlmutter's biases. Like that scene from Endgame that many agreed was a bit too on the nose, but even with some pandering and bad jokes, Endgame was still pretty solid. But that hasn't exactly been the case going forward. I feel like with these later phases of the MCU, they felt like they would make superhero movies which would appeal to men, but have them led by women, so that way they would get a sizable female audience. However, I do think these missed the mark, causing them to fall flat with basically the entire audience, and coming off as more pandering instead of being a fleshed out story. The 2017 Wonder Woman movie was unique in that it had a majority female audience, something that we don't often see with superhero films, but there were a lot of factors that went into that to draw that female audience, not just that Diana's a woman. In fact, I've heard this movie be described as a Disney princess film but with superheroes. The film also had a romantic subplot, and Hollywood lately has been avoiding romance, not just in superhero action films, but just kind of in general, whether it's Wish removing their romantic male lead, along with their evil power couple, or just Hollywood generally not making romantic comedies anymore, believing that they wouldn't be a good return on investment, and were instead trying to stick to blockbuster action movies. Wonder Woman was able to differentiate itself from other movies in the genre, while also having a compelling narrative. Meanwhile, Marvel hasn't been willing to differentiate themselves from their other movies, along with the writing quality going down, resulting in some very underwhelming entries. Thor: Love and Thunder, The Marvels, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, all of which just didn't have very strong writing, along with some other major problems behind the scenes, such as mismanaging these projects, like how Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was supposed to be a follow-up to WandaVision, except the writers for that movie didn't actually watch WandaVision, causing a pretty big disconnect between the two, along with flooding Disney Plus with supplementary MCU content, to where it felt kinda like you had to do homework to catch up to the movies, which basically takes away the charm of all these movies leading into each other in the first place. Along with a lack of variety among what they have on offer, Marvel did have a previous series of shows on Netflix Netflix that focused on street-level heroes, all culminating in the Defenders. And these shows added some much-needed variety into the MCU. Instead of being more superhero action that culminates in a skybeam, these shows had more varied genres. Crime drama, courtroom drama, psychological thrillers. And it was nice to see Marvel be more experimental with these. They even had one that was female-led with Jessica Jones, which was pretty well received and had 3 seasons. They even breathed new life into some older characters, like Daredevil and Punisher, which also had movies in the early 2000s that were also not well received, just like Catwoman and Elektra. The truth is, it's more about the quality of the writing than the lead character. After all, movies are really only as good as their writers. These movies weren't bad because Daredevil was the lead character, or Catwoman, which to be honest wasn't actually Catwoman, it was in name only. She wasn't even called Selena Kyle, so holding that against all female-led superhero properties really isn't fair. However, there have been some major successes that will hopefully show Hollywood that it's okay to experiment, and variety is a good thing. Movies like Barbie with its overt feminine aesthetic, or Oppenheimer, a historical drama that made some unique artistic choices, or Wicked, an adaptation of a Broadway musical. The Sonic movie franchise is one of those rare franchises that actually got better with each sequel, and its budget was only $122 million, a smaller budget than we usually see with blockbusters, including the MCU. However, the CGI and choreography for Sonic 3 was much more impressive than we've been seeing from the MCU, which unfortunately has become notorious for putting a lot of strain on their FX artists and subjecting them to major crunches, which has led to some pretty infamous scenes that just look terrible. Again, prioritizing cranking out as much content as possible, but not having good quality control in both the writing and the visuals. But Sonic the Hedgehog 3 proves that that's not necessary, and if they actually put proper effort into these projects, while listening to the fans like Sonic the Hedgehog did, major franchises like the MCU probably wouldn't be in such a sorry state these days, on top of the overexposure. Entertainment isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's okay to have different genres that appeal to different audiences. Hopefully companies can reflect and see what worked and what didn't, so going forward we can have a better variety of options. And in my opinion, it's not just the West that has this problem. We see similar trends in anime too, particularly with the rise of isekai, or shows referring to being transported to another world, which has become extremely oversaturated recently, and that trend is not stopping anytime soon, as we're now seeing over 30 isekai anime being produced each year, and it's been drawing ire from some anime fans. While isekai has had a long history of great shows, like Digimon or Magic Knight Rayearth, most of the new shows we're seeing are pretty low effort, often seeing the same tropes and just not a lot of variety between these shows, despite all the potential within the genre. For example, most of the time the protagonist is transported to the other world by dying, and then being reincarnated into this new existence. People noticed a pattern when it came to these characters' demise. Many of them were taken out by traffic accidents, and a sizable portion of that were specifically involving trucks, leading to a meme called Truck-kun, where secretly this truck is purposely seeking out anime protagonists in order to set the plot in motion. This meme is so prevalent it even has a Wikipedia article, and even manga and anime that focus on Truck-kun, on his quest to deliver heroes to their new homes. Parody is actually a pretty common subgenre for isekai, but to be honest, it's not really helping with how oversaturated isekai actually is, which is admittedly a bit ironic. Like I said, I still think isekai has a lot of potential, but they are really hurting still for variety, both within and outside of the genre. The last media I want to talk about is books. In recent years, they've been focusing a lot on catering to TikTok, along with AO3, publishing a lot of fanfiction as actual books, causing a similar oversaturation problem we're seeing with isekai. I understand that these companies are profit-driven, and they see TikTok and isekai fans as a guaranteed market, and that's fine. It's just that it would be nice if there was more variety for the rest of us, especially since there is kind of a quality control problem when it comes to these genres, a lot of them being kind of shallow wish fulfillment. Despite romantasy getting half of its namesake from the term fantasy, oftentimes the fantasy elements feel undercooked, and it's more like they just think dragons and castles are cool, and they want an excuse to include them. Again, not too dissimilar to isekai, often taking place in a generic medieval fantasy world, with love interests that are kinda shallow and basically only there for fan service. And ironically, despite the fact that romance is the second half of the romantasy title, the same can be true for these books as well. Sometimes it feels like they just want to skip to the spicy content, even if it means skipping building up the actual relationship. There's also the trend of giving these spicy books very unassuming covers, looking like something more out of middle grade instead of new adult. Before, spicier content usually had hot guys without shirts, making it pretty overt who the target audience was and the kind of contents within the book. However, apparently people got self-conscious about it, not wanting others to know what kind of content they were reading. However, this has caused issues, like unsuspecting readers picking up books that have mature content they didn't plan for, or even them getting into the hands of children, causing them to be exposed to non-age appropriate content, and also leaving those who are looking for cleaner content feeling a bit ostracized, and leaving them with less options with newer releases. Maybe they could try implementing a rating system like they have with manga, movies, and video games. That way people can make more informed choices about the books they're picking up. But either way, it would still be nice to have more variety on the shelves. While there's nothing really wrong with chasing trends or doing what's popular, it more depends on the quality of the writing and storytelling. Plus, there's a large audience out there full of people with different interests, and it's okay to have a variety of options instead of only catering to one crowd. And hopefully companies across the media will pick up on that. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think the media could use more variety? I'd love to hear from you, so leave your comments down below. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to the members: Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Phil C, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Bam, Lucas Geist, Jay Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XV Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Dakari the Professor, Todd McCaffrey, Omni Fair, Crimson Phantom, Datadyne Executive, Cavalcoj, Strider Exile, Killer Bomb, User Not Found Yet, Owen Wildish, Slawa Saporigiz, Entwined Boot 301, Griffin of Might, and Frankie Camarillo. Thank you for the support. And if you want to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And that part's free. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.